It's long been just AMD versus Nvidia in the graphics card market, and in recent years, Nvidia have been leading by significant margin, with AMD appearing just to play catch-up by offering cards with inferior features at Nvidia's price is -$50. So it's not been that exciting for your average PC gamer. I remember a time when things were different, when there was more competition, but without that, prices have crept up, and aside from low performance APUs, the budget market for PC gamers has sort of dried up. But then Intel rode in with Arc. Finally, a third choice. Now, we all knew it would be a long and difficult road for Intel to reach parity with AMD and Nvidia. It takes billions to create a new graphics architecture from scratch. Intel were one of the few companies big enough to try it, but they were still playing catch up with two giants in the industry who had decades of drivers and experience to fall back on already. So when Intel's first generation of graphics cards, the A series, came out, they were surprisingly good. They offered very good performance for their price, competitive ray tracing performance, and even provided their own upscaling technology, which at the time bested AMD's. Add to that Intel's mastery of video encoding and their generous VRAM amounts, and out of the gate, even with just the first generation of cards, they were already tempting options for some prospective buyers. But it was still early days, and the drivers needed time to mature, so most reviews acknowledged the card's potential, but said to hold off, as casual gamers wouldn't want the hassle of a graphics card that struggled to run some older, and indeed brand new, games at the time. Intel had to prove that they were in this for the long run. And they've been doing exactly that, with regular and large driver updates, quickly addressing problems that people have had with their cards, and generally bringing them up to an acceptable state. More recently, along came Battlemage, Intel's second generation of graphics cards. These were, and still are, attractive options for less than $250, carving out a budget gaming niche that's been sorely neglected by the other companies in the industry for close to a decade. But people are still a bit wary about the drivers, and also about the future of Intel's graphics division. But I took the plunge. I got myself a B580 and I've been testing it out. It was a bit sad to admit, but when I turned it on for the first time and it loaded up my desktop without a problem, I was a bit relieved. Come on Philip, have higher expectations than that. And I've been testing it out in games ever since, and you know what? The drivers are great. They're quick to get support in latest games, and we've tested it out extensively in older titles at LANs, and it's made a believer out of me. For 99% of games, these cards are perfect. And very cheap. Sure, its screen capture tool is a mess, but that matters more to YouTubers than it does to gamers, and I was almost ready to recommend these cards wholeheartedly to people looking for a budget gaming build. The future looked bright for Intel's graphics division. After all, with all their processors having onboard graphics based on similar technology, Intel stood to gain significantly from investing in the future of their dedicated graphics cards. Why wouldn't they carry on with the project? But this year, Intel have declared that they are in significant financial trouble, and their new CEO did stupid short-term stuff like to cut everything but the core products. Graphics cards weren't mentioned in these cuts, but then graphics cards weren't mentioned much at all, and suddenly, just as their graphics cards had become viable options, they didn't again, and the future looked rocky. Intel managed to clutch failure from the jaws of success. And now, Intel have declared a partnership with Nvidia to create RTX SoCs, being Intel processors with graphics powered by Nvidia. And now it seems even less likely that Intel will stick to their own graphics tech, if they're just going to use Nvidia's hardware and drivers instead. This has all been great news for Intel to get so much investment from first the US government and now from Nvidia. Their stock price has shot up and Grandma is happy. But I see all this as being disastrous news for the future of PC users. Let's go through the three possibilities. The first is if this collaboration with Nvidia is simply extra. If we try to see it more from Nvidia's perspective, it could be a way for them to get into the APU market. And if that's the reason, then Intel will only be happy to receive short-term financial help and a potential new market for their own products. APUs have historically been AMD's domain, armed with decent processor and graphics tech already, and having already powered several generations of consoles, and the Steam Deck, and various other handhelds as well. So such a collaboration between Intel and Nvidia could be more for Nvidia's benefit by having an established x86 processor to go alongside their graphics technology. This isn't Nvidia's first rodeo into APUs though. They've already got their Tegra chips, which combine their graphics technology with ARM processors. It's what powers It's what powers Nintendo's Switch consoles. Also, with growing demand for AI, there could be a benefit to both companies to collaborate to develop chips for upcoming AI data centers. After all, Nvidia sees themselves more as an AI company these days than they do a graphics company. and their revenue reflects this. So yeah, if it's just extra, it should have no impact on Intel's own graphics tech. The second possibility is if Intel have internally already given up on their graphics tech, but don't want to announce it publicly just yet, because what benefit would there be for them doing so? Soon after the Nvidia announcement, they implied it wouldn't come at the expense of their own tech, so let's read the exact wording going on here. We're not discussing specific roadmaps at this time, but the collaboration is complementary to Intel's roadmap, and Intel will continue to have GPU product offerings. Remember, it takes years for a product to be developed. A collaboration made today doesn't immediately transform every product release from this point on. So this wording doesn't rule out the possibility that they're merely referring to products already in development still being supported. Because if they've got upcoming processors with Intel graphics cards inside, they're not exactly going to rip them out, are they? But it could be the start of the end, and they may power down any future investment into future graphics tech. Maybe from this point forward, any new products they commence work on won't have Intel graphics inside, and we'll only see those products reaching shelves in 3, 4, 5 years' time. That's several more years of selling products with Intel graphics inside, or at the very least, making those products more appealing for people to buy if choosing a new setup. My problem with Intel's comments since this merger is that it's all been left a little bit vague, especially as they refuse to discuss specific roadmaps. Intel Arc graphics. Just look at Google's Stadia. It was never that successful, but Google remained committed to supporting it. Until they weren't. Even 3 days before Stadia's cancellation, Google were promising new and upcoming games on the platform. There was just no guarantee, and people buying into their claims and promises did so at their own risk, and I see that being the same case with Intel's technologies right now. If you look at Intel's Arc cards, Intel aren't even promising future commitments to that, just vague quotes that can be interpreted at will. So I don't see Intel continuing to have GPU product offerings as being a specific commitment to future development of their dedicated graphics cards. And the third, and most likely possibility, in my opinion, is that Intel haven't made their own mind up just yet. This seems to be the case right now, as Intel as a company right now seems as though they're thrashing about, making decisions here and there, trying to navigate the short term, and they rightly see this collaboration with Nvidia as making sense. But you don't just get something new without giving something else up. Now, imagine this completely hypothetical and incredibly unlikely scenario. Imagine you have a girlfriend. Imagine then you decide you want a second girlfriend. And you manage to get another, but you promise your first girlfriend that it won't change your relationship with them. It inevitably will, won't it? You won't get another if the first was serving your needs perfectly. Even if you try your best, your time and effort is now divided between two different things, and your relationship with the first will inevitably be changed in some way. Maybe only in small, creeping ways at first. Maybe Intel decides to drop Intel graphics in another processor lineup, or they see this new collaboration as an excuse to never release a new graphics card that would otherwise have been invested into. Maybe Nvidia's tech proves superior to Intel's, and it seems like a no-brainer to replace certain Intel products with Nvidia ones. A gradual creep here and there until it dawns on the first girlfriend, who just happens to be called Arc Graphics, that they're just a side piece, and eventually one that's no longer worth the time and money investment into. I mean, the analogy sort of breaks down here, but as someone who's invested in their Arc Graphics, I'm beginning to feel like that girlfriend that Intel are cheating on, or are trying to convince that polyamory somehow benefits me in ways, even though I'm not the one being polyamorous and I get nothing extra from Intel's arrangement. Okay, the analogy has completely broken down, but it conveys my feelings about this new collaboration nicely. Especially because it appears that Intel have been cheating on me behind my back for almost a year already, without telling me. Yes, this collaboration between Intel and Nvidia has apparently been in the works for almost a year already. So how am I supposed to take this news that Intel have been cheating on me, but chose not to tell me until now, but now they have, I'm told not to worry because they'll continue to love me just the same? Oh, I'm getting sad. How do you interpret this announcement? I'd love to see your thoughts about it, and it'll be fascinating to read the comments of this video in a few years' time and to see who was right and who was mercilessly betrayed. Regardless of what happens, a future without dedicated Intel graphics cards is a sad future for everyone. Less choice, less competition, less need for the remaining companies to innovate, So I hate the idea that Ark's story ends here, through no fault of its own, or of the engineers dedicated to the project. They've done their best. And if Ark does end here, I'll forever be asking, what could it have been? It feels like there's so much potential, yet short-termism has won out. And it's a vicious circle, because if Intel isn't bothered about supporting its technology moving forward, then nobody else will either. And I'll regret this purchase.